Jeff Slauson here from 19 News Now at the 19 News digital desk. We have some breaking news related to Norfolk Southern and the payments that have to happen related to the community in East Palestine. Let me take you back to 2023. A Norfolk Southern train dislodged from the track, pouring toxic chemicals throughout the East Palestine community. Since then, it has been a very long process for the folks that live there. Very toxic chemicals, again, were released into the community. Vinyl chloride was the number one that we saw, and there ended up being a burn-off that took place. That burn-off very much so debated if it even needed to happen or not. Ultimately determined that not the best course of action there. But then there was a debate over who would have to pay what. Now, a $600 million settlement was what a court decided was necessary for Norfolk Southern to pay. But Norfolk Southern didn't want to pay the whole thing. So they believed that GATX, which is the company that manufactures the train cars, bared some responsibility on that. Well, according to a court announced today, they do not. Showing you right now the NTSB footage from the aerial view of the disaster. According to an Ohio jury that deliberated earlier today, even though the failure of bearing on its rail cars carrying plastic pellets caused the pileup, GATX is not responsible for any of the payment. They say, according to the statement that we got from them, that they're pleased with the trial outcome, that Norfolk Southern alone is responsible for the derailment and resulting damage in East Palestine. Now, Norfolk Southern, essentially what their argument throughout this is that, while yes, they are willing to pay for it, they believe that some of the responsibility needs to be shared and that someone needs to be held accountable. They say that the chemicals that spilled out as a result of it should be some sort of a bearing on the actual containers that it's being kept in. Now, this is not the first lawsuit that Norfolk Southern has lost related to this. They lost a similar lawsuit last year. That's when they tried to force GATX and then oxyvinyls, which made the vinyl chloride, to help pay for the environmental cleanup of all of this. That cost them $1 billion. Similar agreements or similar arguments and similar decision. Norfolk Southern is solely responsible for what happened. Norfolk Southern has to pay for it all. So in total, they had to pay out $1 billion, or have to pay out, excuse me, for the environmental cleanup of what's going on in East Palestine. In addition to that, it is now a $600 million settlement with the folks of East Palestine. So this is now the part where they have to pay the actual residents of East Palestine. The settlement itself, the $600 million, is what the agreement came to with the residents. Residents would have taken, or neighbors would have taken they took a certain amount already, but that did not prohibit them from taking any money related to this $600 million settlement as well. I think it's important to kind of just go back really quickly here to the investigation itself. So after that derailment took place, again, you're seeing all this video courtesy of the NTSB. The NTSB then did their investigation, and they confirmed that the vent and burn, what you're seeing there, right? So the burning off of the chemicals was not necessary because the tank cars were cooling off, and that the railroad failed to listen to the advice of the experts from the vinyl chloride company that basically said not to do it. The argument here from Norfolk Southern was this was a needed operation. That vinyl chloride company bears responsibility because it was their chemicals. And GATX, they say, should have done more to take care of its rail cars, particularly, as they say, after it was surrounded by floodwaters, which could have damaged its bearings. GATX went back and said that they complied with all regulations for taking care of the rail cars. They even went on to say that if the car was damaged by any sort of flooding, anything like that, it's the railroad's responsibility to spot that problem and repair it, and then they would send GATX the bill for the repairs. So it's not GATX's responsibility to make sure that the cars are running at tip-top shape. What they will do if there is a problem that is noticed by Norfolk Southern is they will then take the bill for the repairs, they'll pay it back, but they can't be looking at each individual rail car. So that's basically their argument here. Well, yes, the rail cars potentially were damaged. They were not to know about it if they were not notified. Norfolk Southern believed it didn't matter regardless. You gotta pay. The NTSB would go on to say that the crash itself was a failure of an overheating bearing on the GATX's rail car, so on the specific rail car. And that is why the crash took place. So Norfolk Southern took that information and said, you know what, if you list GATX as the reason why this crash happened, or at least the car that GATX produced as the reason why this happened, we're going to say then that you have to help us pay. But again, in the guidelines, it's different. GATX will change in effect, at least according to the courts, and this is brand new, this is just out of the courts today. They will go on and change and pay for everything if they're notified. But it is not their responsibility to know when an issue arises because they don't have eyes on every single part of the train cars. So, for the second time, a court has agreed. And now Norfolk Southern is on the hook for $1.6 billion in damages. $1 billion for environmental cleanup that's been taking place and ongoing, and $600 million to the residents of East Palestine. A massive, massive payout. GATX, that is the company, again, that manufactures the rail cars, they are not responsible. The company that manufactures the vinyl chloride, which is the toxic chemicals that came out as a result, they are not liable. Norfolk Southern is the only one. And again, I want to read the statement here. Norfolk Southern called the verdict what they said is disappointing. It won't affect their commitment to actually pay, but they say, for more than 2 years, Norfolk Southern has paid the costs related to the derailment while acknowledging and acting on our own responsibility for the accident. Their belief, our belief, that's what they say, has always been that GATX shares in that responsibility and should also be held accountable. So even in defeat in court, they are not saying that they should get 100% of it. In fact, they're very clearly saying Norfolk Southern is the one, or excuse me, the GATX is the one that shares the responsibility because they claim that those same rail cars were damaged years prior. But again, GATX's laws state, at least according to the court documents here and according to what the court said, GATX will repair it if they're notified of the problem. If they're never notified of the problem, they can't repair something they don't know about. So again, $1.6 billion in total in damages, $1 billion for the environmental settlement. That was agreed to last year. $600 million is now what has been determined to go to the residents of East Palestine. We will wait to get more information on how the neighbors of East Palestine will actually get that money. A lot of them uprooted from their homes, removed from their homes. A horrible situation, now getting a little bit of hope in this. But this is still a situation that's ongoing. This happened in 2023. We are in 2025. 2 years removed from it, and people are still dealing with the fallout of it. People's homes still smelling like that vinyl chloride, scared to go and dig down into their property, unsure of what sediments are there. And while the soil samples and the air samples all came back to show that it is safe, you still can't repair peace of mind for these folks. How are they to know? How are they to be sure? If you have a young kid, it's very difficult to feel confident in the place that you're living in, and this $600 million, according to the court, shows that there is responsibility, and that responsibility is solely on Norfolk Southern, who operated the train when the crash happened, and now they have to continue to pay up. We are going to be covering this story much more tonight on 19 News. Of course, this is our breaking news story of the evening. We will see you all coming up 10 o'clock on Cleveland Zone 43, and then, of course, WOIO. We'll see everybody there.
19 News, now streaming on Samsung Smart TV. Search for channel 1035.